Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Firebytes. Today we're going to be talking about APT Blocker, which stands for Advanced Persistent Threats Blocker. And that part of that advanced threats are going to be a zero-day malware. You know, really these items that are overwhelming traditional antivirus engines as we know them today. So as we look at today's agenda, again, we're just going to keep it more on the tech level, but certainly around the 30-minute mark, we're going to cover why am I being targeted, what is APT Blocker, then we're going to dive in, look at some examples, and then we're going to go over how to activate the free trial of APT Blocker if you're not currently using it today, and then set up APT Blocker. So before we begin, if you've joined us for our previous sessions, through Watchguard Dimension, I would really encourage you to set up Dimension prior to setting up APT Blocker, because Dimension's where you're going to get all those email alerts from. You're going to get all those that visibility components, if you recall some of those earlier sessions on Dimension. So as we look at this, and I know for some of you, you might have heard me talking about APT Blocker, but going out to local trade shows, I'm polling customers, and probably about 6 months ago, we used to see only about maybe 10% of people that have heard about CryptoLocker or CryptoWall, some sort of ransomware or other item malware out there. And now we're seeing about 60%. In fact, I have people coming up to me and asking me at trade shows, well, does Watchguard have an APT solution? So absolutely, we wanted to focus on what we're doing at Watchguard for advanced persistent threats. And ultimately, you know, starting out with the most basic of why am I being targeted. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because most of you are engineers on the phone and you realize why you're being targeted. But again, just to cover some of these things. So, you know, we really started out with APTs more of a nation state. Now we see that hackers are actually trying to make more money with targeting every mom and pop shop or every person. For instance, if they can send a file, trick you into clicking on it, which I have a number of stories about. One, my old boss came in one day and said, I've got this UPS tracking. You click on it, it goes black screen, and then comes back. I said, well, unfortunately, you probably just installed some sort of malware on your computer. So if a hacker can get you as a user to click on a file, either through you know, an enticing name or correlate it with events that are going on in the nation or in the news, then they're going to have more of a chance of infecting your computer. And then in the case of ransomware, they're going to grab those files, encrypt them, and then hold them ransom for, the last I've seen was 2 Bitcoins because it's completely untraceable. So as we look at some other ways that people are being targeted, we're looking at zero-day exploits. We're looking at that evasive malware, CryptoLocker. Maybe it's a certificate, a stolen certificate. Spear phishing is a big one because most of the time users are susceptible to relevant news stories, and then criminal watering hole attacks. For instance, maybe I have a Drupal or a WordPress website, or maybe a SSL that now has a vulnerability. How can I address those? And certainly Watchguard has the security that you need to protect your sites. So the biggest issue, you know, people in conversations generally ask me, well, how is it that these antivirus engines still do not have a signature for this file? And truthfully, you know, as we talk about CryptoWall or APT Blocker, from an engineer side, it's one of the most difficult things to demonstrate, and we'll go over that today. But ultimately, let's say in a demonstration, I grab a file, run it through, make sure things are working. now the next time I try to submit that file, it's now blocked. So and part of that reason is why we are seeing so many variations are, for instance, these files are programs called PX Crypter or FUD Crypter or any number of crypter tools on the internet. This particular one was for charge, but essentially I would, if I grabbed a crypto locker variation, maybe there's an antivirus signature for that today, I can go ahead and browse, upload that file into this program, change the icon file name, maybe make it, you know, like a toll road or some other sort of personality that users would correlate to. And then I have these advanced settings. Now, many of you that are familiar with, for instance, APT solutions out there, you know that we're running in a virtualized environment. Now, when we talk about anti-virtualization, we have the power at Watchguard, leveraging our best-of-breed partner, Lastline out of California, who's been doing this for years. We have the power to look at this anti-virtualization and essentially take away any sort of cloak and dagger or cloak that this malware is doing, because we're able to look at the CPU level, the system calls, rather than having, for instance, the agent in the system bar of a virtual client, in which we would lose integrity. We're also able to look at sandboxing, anti-sandboxing technology, and circumvent, for instance, these cloaks as well. One of the ways that attackers are getting files through is essentially these files are laying dormant. They're saying, okay, after 5 minutes, we're going to start up because we've run all of our system checks on there. With Lastline, what we're able to do because of that virtual environment, and we're running at the CPU, just like we would be doing with a port mirroring mode on a switch, we're running essentially a CPU mirror mode. So what we're able to do is quite fascinating, actually, is we're able to speed up or slow down time, but most importantly, is speed up time to jump ahead 5 minutes, 10 minutes, even 8 hours, so that we're able to see that virus or malware come to life and then find out what it's doing at that point. Now, what is APT Blocker? Again, that's from Lastline out of California. And it's a couple of key things here. It's going to identify and submit suspicious files to cloud-based next-gen full system emulation. What does that really mean? We'll get into that, showing you that in a few minutes here. It's going to provide real-time threat visibility, protection in minutes and not hours. We're going to analyze a comprehensive set of files, which is executables, Office documents, PDFs, Android APKs. Now, the important thing with Android APKs, and I apologize if you've heard this from me before, but as we talk about Google Play Store versus the Apple Store for iPhone, Android, or sorry, iPhone, iPad, the important thing to note is that Apple has generally a more secure channel unless you jailbreak. They're locking you into that app store. Now, a lot of you that are Android users don't like Apple for that reason. And this isn't necessarily a debate of Apple versus Android, but as we look at, for instance, the Android topology, I could get any app. So let's take, for instance, my children, they love Angry Birds, right? So I could go out, look for Angry Birds. Now, there's going to be a free version or a 99-cent version, what have you. And most users are going to choose the free version. Now, today they are, you know, the free legitimate versions are riddled with ads, so we can generally deal with those. But what I could do as a hacker is take, for instance, buy that Angry Birds for 99 cents, open it up and put in a keylogger on your Android phone or your Android tablet so that if there's any pictures, any text, I could grab copies of those and simply do a keylogger of all your information that you're putting in your mobile handheld. So that's why the Android APKs are so important. As we look at PDFs or Microsoft documents, running those macros in Excel, we're going to be able to detect all of those and analyze that in that environment. We're going to be able to detect zero-day malware. As we look at that, we're going to, and we'll walk through that process of how it runs through your system. And then again, we're not being fooled by evasion because we are running a CPU level of monitoring on there. And as I mentioned, one of the hardest things about APT from a demo standpoint, and certainly if you're engineers out there trying to establish value, I can help you out with that, but it certainly is difficult. So a lot of them that we see are actually screenshots on this. So I wanted to go spend a few minutes why WatchGuard's APT solution. So if you are keeping up with the news, you know that a number of other security firewalls, other security vendors are actually signing up with Lifeline because they are really the leader in what they're doing. Now, as a WatchGuard customer, that's actually great news as well, because rather than just a sample of maybe WatchGuard customers, so you have a couple 100,000 users in the world, we now are adding on to that sample pool. So now, rather than just being one, and you know, if we take simple ratios, if I'm one of 10 users, chances are that I'm going to get attacked or increased exponentially. Now, in the world of security, if I take that and I'm one of 1 million, then my odds of being attacked are minimal. So as we look at WatchGuard's APT solution, one of the biggest differentiators between that and some of our partner or our competitors trying to do APT in-house with some of their solutions is we have results in under 15 seconds. So as we look at this, again, this is just from our log viewer. I submitted at around 11:08. In here, we see HTTP file submitted to APT analysis server. As we look at that, I'll show you how to monitor that through some of your tools that WatchGuard provides you. And then within under 15 seconds, here we go, we have APT threat notified, a low APT threat. At this point, as a system administrator, you would have received an email. So again, that speed of being able to find out what that file is doing, analyze that file, and deliver those results back. Again, we're giving you that visibility and management through one pane of glass. Either that's the visibility through a Firebox System Manager or WatchGuard Dimension, which we'll cover as well on seeing those threats. So that's a submission example. Now, as we look at the actual process of what's happening behind the scenes, let's talk about that for a few minutes. So as you look at the APT blocker, one of the criteria that you need, let's say you're a reseller or you want to install or you want to purchase the APT subscription, the precursor to run an APT blocker is that you have to have the antivirus subscription, because a lot of those, whether it's the Coca-Cola greeting cards that we saw a couple of years back, or I think it was the Santa Claus 8 years back that was just sending out mass emails to thousands of users, we are keeping our speed and efficiency down with APT blocker by running those files first through antivirus. So whether it's a signature that we have, a file that's out there for years, we're going to be able to just stop that, curtail that threat immediately. So once it's passed, let's say it is an advanced or a zero-day malware, it gets past the antivirus engine. Now we're going to hit APT blocker. We're going to take that file, and we have we grab MD5, signature of that file. So within there, we have a local cache, a local database that's stored on our WatchGuard. So that, let's say it's a tax refund, which is a sample that we'll go over later on today. So let's say it's a tax refund, and this just happened today where I downloaded it, and so now that's sitting in my local cache of my firewall. So next time I download it, I'm going to get it immediately blocked from downloading that again. Now, if it wasn't in my local Firebox's cache or database, it sits in the remote cache or database at last line. So again, this is just a file that we know that we've already analyzed in the past. We don't need to run that analysis again because we already know about that MD5 signature. Now, for some reason, we take the MD5, we don't find it in the local or remote cache. This is where we actually upload it into the last line virtual environment, and then we look at the analysis on the programs, the operating system, the CPU level. Once we determine that that threat is either a low, on up, through a high, now we're able to redistribute that signature through the remote cache as well as the pull down to the local cache if need be. So a sample of that, and this was actually a real life file that tried to come through. Now, as I mentioned before, many of you that know me, I do spend a fair amount of time traveling. Now, as we look at this email and we look at some of the details of this email, it might not be that strange if I were to see an email from American Airlines. No, because I'm in the Northwest, I travel Alaska quite a bit, but let's say I did travel American Airlines and I got an email, received an email that said your order is processed. Again, for some of you that don't travel, maybe that would be more suspicious, but for myself, maybe they had done their research and found out that I did travel, and let's say this attacker even knew that I worked for Watchguard and they wanted to send me a file in hopes that I would open it and provide them with a tiny window into a Watchguard, into their security by simply using me as a chain of trust. So as we look at this, we see order is processed. Fortunately, I had APT blocker. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it was actually in a zip file. So many of you are aware, but for those of you that aren't aware, we're going to look in zips, RARs, any compressed file, look inside that file and or that zip, extract it, and then analyze that file here. So again, this was AA, and then a series of numbers, a zip. Fortunately, Watchguard was able to remove that and send me an email notification so that I'm aware that I was being protected. And again, this was in September of 2014. Now, as we look at a more recent example, as I mentioned, from an engineer standpoint, it's very difficult to get a file, zero-day malware, and to have it be submitted to last line for that analysis. However, this was a file that I had actually grabbed a while ago, stuck it onto my private website, and I wanted to rerun the analysis of that. So it was out of my local cache, had expired. So as we look at this, we see that I did receive an email notification. Now, for those of you that want email notifications, just be aware that you need to have Watchguard Dimension and set up that email alert logging, which I have covered under previous series as well. So if you have questions on that, feel free to reach out and I will direct you to the right resources. But in this case, I'm running behind a M400, the latest and greatest 64-bit firewalls from Watchguard running the Intel Quick Assist chips. Phenomenal technology. So as we look at this, we're seeing APT threat detected, source IP, destination, proxy host, and then the file. So as I mentioned, tax refund, right? This was a file that I had seen in the wild right after tax season, April 15th was around, and people were trying to, or hackers were trying to get people to click on a tax refund within that. And it is a doc, but there was some sort of, and we can go into those details as well. So from there, this was an actual, I had to grab a screenshot really quick on my Firebox System Manager. because as I mentioned, this is really a one-time shot of being able to grab these files. But we can see here, May 15th, 8 o'clock this morning, I submitted a file to analysis, to APT analysis server. I got the results back, and then it sent an email out with that notification there. And I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to be able to do that as well. So as we look at the one thing I did want to cover here is how to be able to get your trial key. So the first thing you want to do is log into your Watchguard support center. You can go into manage my products. I have a fair amount of products, as you might imagine, from Watchguard, so I just went ahead and grabbed the one here. We have Blumhardt T10W. This one is the one that I take with me on the road. Actually, I just got this guy here. We can see that it doesn't have an APT subscription. This one is, you know, for those that travel, this one's set up as a branch office VPN. I plug it into a hotel network, or I join it onto a Wi-Fi network, which if you haven't seen, very cool. You can take the wireless of the T10 and join it right to that hotel wireless network, and it syncs up that branch office VPN to my office so that it's as I'm working from my office. Very slick, and that's through the dynamic branch office VPN. Let me know if you're interested in finding out more about that. But in this particular case, I just got this new T10W. And go ahead and just click on under Advanced Persistent Threat. And again, if you have just purchased a live security and you don't have any of these, you can run these trials for any one of them. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on free trial here for APT. And it should, maybe it's been sitting there for too long, but what it's going to do is give me a feature key that now I can take in let me just go ahead and refresh my session here. There we go. We can take a feature key and grab it. And it seems like I have a number of APT blockers available here. I'm just going to go ahead. Obviously, something wasn't quite right. Let's go back under Manage My Products. Oh, and that's why it threw me out of my session, so bear with me 1 second here. I'm going to go ahead and log into my portal, go into Manage My Products from here. As I mentioned, I'm going to grab that feature key and update my device with that. Click on search to find that product. If I knew the serial number, I could go ahead and just enter that there as well. I'm going to go in under my T10W. Now, the great thing about, as we talk about feature keys, one of the incredible things about Watchguard is being able to grab that config, throw it on from one device to the other device, and that feature key is independent. Some of our competitors, they loop in or they bundle all of that, so you can't grab that config and change it. With Watchguard, we make it incredibly easy to change from one device to another. So again, I'm just going to go under a free trial here for APT. Looks a lot better this time. I'm going to go ahead and throw on my data loss prevention as well. You could do that on yours. Select next on there. I'm going to accept the EULA. Click on next, and then ultimately grab that feature key. While that's working, I'm going to show you, this is my T10W. I can go under subscription services. We see here, or we don't see the panes here for those security subscriptions. We have under subscription services, your feature key does not allow this feature to be enabled. So I'm just going to go ahead and get to the place where I'm going to go under feature key. And now I could automatically synchronize my feature key with Watchguard simply by clicking Enable Automatic Feature Key Synchronization, or I could download it. But in this case, I just wanted to show you how I can grab that feature key. And again, that's just a text, a plain text file. I'm just going to come over here and click on Update Feature Key and just paste the feature key. It says the changes were successfully applied. And now under here, we should see APT blocker enabled, and it's going to expire in 30 days from here. So now the next step is just go under subscription services, go to APT blocker. And again, this is the web UI management side of Watchguard. We also have policy manager as well. I'm just going to go ahead and click on enable APT blocker. I'm going to say anything from low to high threats, we want to go ahead and drop. Now, if we wanted to, we could also alarm those threats as well. And as we talk about alarming, many of you do realize or are aware that Watchguard has under notifications, we can say send notification via email. If it was pop-up window, this would be on the Watchguard system or a server center, wherever that software was installed. Certainly, if you wanted to send a SNMP trap, you could do that as well. But in this case, I just want to be notified via email that I had a threat going on. I could click on policy, enable, or select the HTTP proxy policy that I want to enable on, and click on enable. Save that configuration, and it's that easy to set up APT blocker. Now, as we talk about the value of APT blocker, I just wanted to show you as well. So I'm in a Firebox System Manager. Many of you are aware of this tool. And there are a number of things under traffic management, or under traffic monitor to make your life a little easier as a system administrator. Some of the tips and tricks under file settings that I like to share with people is that you can increase your log messages. Certainly, you know, if this is 25,000, if it's a production environment, that is a little bit more resource intensive. But if you wanted to simply look at a testing environment, you can increase that. The other thing I like to encourage people to click on is this show log field names options here. Now, if you don't have that, you know, as a system administrator, you would just see the IPs in there. You wouldn't necessarily know if it was a source or destination. So by showing those extra settings, log field names, we're able to get a little more details on that. So for APT, there's a number of trigger fields that you could type in here. APT gives us that just APT activity. We see here that an email came through that we've submitted to APT analysis. As we look at what that actually was, we can look at, we see here a requirement PDF under there. So again, we're taking that file, looking at that threat before it's being delivered. We're just monitoring that. Now, if you're interested in, for instance, some of those other key triggers, you could type in IKE, which would be all of your branch office, or IKE, apologies, all your branch office VPN traffic in there. And there's certainly some other trigger fields that we'll cover under future Firebytes as well. But under, if we look at, for instance, subscription services, this is just a great way to find out how many threats APT blocker. So we've had 5 threats here, notified objects on 2 of those. So again, just a great way to find out what it's doing on our network. Now, as I mentioned, I had grabbed a copy of that tax refund doc, stored it away on my little private website, and that was, my apologies, that was in February of 2015, February 20 of 2015. Now, as we look at that file, and I just uploaded it to Lastline for analysis right now. The interesting thing is, as we look at that history of that, we look at the virus total link report. So again, this was February of 2015, which you would think that many of these antivirus engines would create a signature for. We see here AVG grabbed a signature for that. But look at all of these antivirus engines that still do not have a signature for that, file, that tax refund. So again, as we talk about, you know, some of these security vendors that have antivirus solutions, again, some of them are very slow to be able to create these signatures, and because they are getting inundated with all these files that are out there. So again, just a phenomenal way to be able to protect your network, your environment, your users from these advanced or zero-day malware threats on there. So with that, I'll wrap it up. I did want to, just like we've done with other sessions, did want to include the next Firebite session is on Friday, June 26th, and that is in going in a direction of integrating Active Directory. Now, one of the biggest questions I hear is how do we associate IPs to usernames? And this is part of the process. So we're going to first talk about integrating Active Directory, then we're going to go into the some of the features of a single sign-on, and definitely cover that. But just like always, the session is being recorded. You can grab that recording on through our YouTube channel. You can definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel to get any updated videos that we have. And if you have any future topics or any questions, feel free to reach out to me. There's my email address right there, and I'll definitely be able to address that as well. So with that, I did want to thank you for joining us for another Firebite session. Hopefully this was beneficial for you. I did see that we have a couple of questions. Unfortunately, with our time, I'm going to have to address those on a per email basis, so look for my responses. But certainly, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on June 26th. Take care.